somebody say something about don't miss it.
Oh, I can't.
Be there.
Listen, be there because tonight it was on fire. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of a Wild Time podcast. I can't thank you guys enough for all the likes, all the subscriptions, and just sharing it and getting it out. Go back. We've had a lot of great content. We have had Rick Rude Jr., the son of ravishing Rick Rude. We've had Ronnie Garvin. We've had the Hands of Stone himself, Wildfire Tommy Rich, a lot of classic professional wrestlers. We've also had what is special to me, the horror community. We've had Big Schwag, Brent Wagner. We've had R.A. Mihailoff. We've had my good buddy John Henderson from Doomsday Crypt, which we'll get to talk about in a little bit. But tonight is special because we're starting spooky season, as I like to call October, off a little special with none other than the mother of the Springwood slasher himself. Amanda Kruger herself, Beatrice Boepple. Beatrice, thank you for coming on, sis. How's it feel? What's been happening?
Hi. Yeah, well, I liked how you threw in that none other. Anyway, no, I'm doing great. I actually just came from playing Mahjong. I don't know if any of you guys out there play Mahjong, but I was playing a Mahjong game, which I hadn't in a long time. So I'm happy. But yeah, no, I'm doing great. And it is starting to look a little fallish here in New York. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but I mean, we might still get those, what they call Indian summer or whatever,
Yeah.
but right now it's been kind of the leaves are starting to fall and getting more Halloween-y by the minute.
Well, that's funny you brought that up because today at work, I was checking my my weather app, and it's going to be like really hot down here the next week. I think in the 90s and mid 90s. So I was trying to think, Indian summer. Yeah, that's what was in my mind. But yeah, I'm starting to feel the cooler mornings and the evenings getting a little bit darker.
Yeah.
Goes on. But yeah, listen, you've got a heck of a collection behind you there, man.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's constantly growing. There's so many cool things by so many fans and amazing artists, that send me all kinds of cool, mostly Elm Street.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would imagine that I have the world's biggest Amanda Kruger collection. Not every actor collects the stuff from their films, but Amanda, Mama Kruger, that's me. So I love all that stuff. And I love the stuff that people come up with. Really, really cool.
I mean, you got the nun with the glasses on back there. That's super cool.
Actually, the glasses, it's so funny. They belong to Mark Patton from Elm Street too. We were at a show together and he had put them on her. And then I totally forgot to give them back to him. But anyway.
I'm sure he'll be glad they ended up on her.
Yeah. We'll see each other we're going to both be at a couple shows later this year too. So he'll get them back.
Well, Beatrice, I've noticed that you've been doing the convention circuit. I mean, you've been hitting the road, hitting the ground running, man. You've been a lot of places, doing a lot of interviews. Is this something that's recently come about, or have you been doing this for a while now?
Yeah, no. I honestly hadn't been involved in. Well, to be honest with you, I hadn't been involved with anything to do with Elm Street or acting or any of that for decades. It's so funny when you talk to who did we just have on? Michael Bailey Smith, who plays, well, in terms of Elm Street, he was Super Freddy, and he also was Danny's body double and such. Anyway, when we had him on a show, we had him on a couple shows, and he was talking about how Elm Street was his very first film ever. He went from being a football player and whatever into acting through his role in Elm Street. I was the opposite. Elm Street was kind of the last role I did, and seriously, I mean, the bulk of my acting was all before, like in the 80s, a lot of these other films.
You were in one of my favorites with Stakeout. I love
Stakeout. Oh, fun, yeah. And then Quarantine I starred in, but yeah, Stakeout was a blast with Emilio and Richard Dreyfuss. But anyhow, yeah, so I had been acting for, I would say the bulk of my acting was in the 80s to early 90s. And then, but after doing Elm Street, the only thing I'd get cast in, the only thing I got auditions for was horror films. And that's because I moved to Hollywood. And Canada, they let you do all kinds of stuff. When you're an actor, you work in whatever you need to do to keep making a living.
Mhm.
But Hollywood likes to just, at least back then, I think it's gotten better now, but they used to compartmentalize. Everybody was, you're either a TV actor or a film actor. You either were a lead or a day player, or, you know, and you either were comedy, drama, like, you know, they just were very compartmentalized. It's opening up now, but for me, having done so many things prior to this, and at the time not being a horror fan, at least certainly not gore,
Right.
the scripts I was getting were horrible. Like if they were good scripts, the genre wouldn't have bothered me.
Yeah.
But you know, there was a lot of crappy stuff going on at that time, and I was really upset. I didn't want to just only do that, and for that and personal reasons too, the relationship, I left after doing Elm Street. I ended up moving to India,
Oh,
which is
really?
what most people do. Yeah, and I lived in India for a couple of years in an ashram, studying meditation and yoga, working on my inner self. And then after that, coming back to the States, it was really hard for me to stomach facing Hollywood again, because I had just learned so much about inner peace and inner life. And as most people know, especially in Hollywood, back in the 80s, it's still tough, but nothing like it was back then. You know, there was so much emphasis on your body and looking a particular way and this, that, and the other. And that's why, you know, pretty much every actor had either anorexia or bulimia
Yeah.
or food issues, or, you know, and lack of self-confidence. And I just learned to, for the first time in my life, feel good about who I was, not based on anything to do with the outside. So I just couldn't stomach the thought of going back and getting, you know, auditioning and having, you know, producers look at you and go, huh, well, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too this, you're too this. I was like, fuck that, you know, excuse me. But anyway, so I kind of moved away from that, and I ended up meeting my husband, and we ended up getting married, deciding to, you know, it's weird. My husband and I decided to get married. No, anyway. And then once we decided to have kids, I just felt, this is not the time to go back into acting. You know, I started a family very late in life. You know, I was in my 30s, mid to late 30s, having kids. And I thought, you know, at this point, if I'm going to have children this late in life, I'm going to be there full time.
Amen.
So I chose to do that. So I kind of stepped away from the whole thing. I couldn't stay away. No actor can really stay away completely. So I did some theater, but I would go under my married name, so I didn't, you know, have to deal with equity union stuff. I did some film, just little student films and stuff, but you know, basically, I kind of completely hid away and just left it all behind. It was when they did Never Sleep Again,
Yeah. the
which was how
documentary.
I don't know how old. What was that, 10 years, 15 years?
I would say probably around 10. Yeah.
10. Yeah. So when they were doing that, what the heck was his name? Tommy Hutton. Might be butchering his name. Tommy Hutton or Hut. He was one of the writers or one of the producers, and he really combed the universe to find every single actor. He pulled so many of us out of the woodwork, you know. And I wasn't the only one. There was a ton of us that had just disappeared after Elm Street or shortly thereafter. You know, people decide to have families and just kind of disappeared. And he found us all. And I have told this story before, but when I was waiting in the waiting room to go in to do my interview, Toy Newkirk from Elm Street 3, or is it 4? In any case, she was sitting out there, and we started chatting, and she says, "Hey, how come I never see you at the cons?" And I was like, "Cons? What on earth is a con?" I had no clue what she was talking about. And she explained to me, and I was like incredulous. I'm like, "What? People want to see us?" You know? And the same Tommy Hutton got the group of us. He might have done a lot of cons with other people, but he got the Elm Street 5 cast together
Yeah.
and put us in a couple shows back to back that year or the following year. So that was exciting. And we had, you know, and for most of us, I know Danny Hassel, Joey, I think it was everybody's first, not Lisa Wilcox. She'd been doing them all along,
Yeah.
but a lot of us were not familiar with it. So we all did it. But then after that kind of dropped away again, because none of us really had a rep that was putting us out there. And I think, well, especially Erica Hassel and myself from the East Coast, we didn't get anything. And I was fine. I just went back to my life raising my kids. But it was like 2 years ago when my second son went into college, and I, for the first time, was an empty nester.
Yeah.
I started to pay more attention to Facebook. I started to get involved and meeting my fans and talking and connecting with them through Facebook. And then suddenly somebody approached me who wanted, Peter Valderrama of Silver Screen Appearances. He asked if he could rep me.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, sure, because I hadn't done anything in like 10 years. And boom, he just booked me like crazy. So I've been doing shows, this year I already did. I was with Mark Patton. We did Queens of Horror out in Texas. We did Crypticon in Kansas. We did Great MediaCon in Pennsylvania, Catastrophicon in Purchase, New York.
You have
Well,
been on
and
the road. I have been paying attention. I mean, a lot of fans are posting pictures with you left and right. And was you at Crypticon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Crypticon, in Kansas,
Yeah, that was
Kansas
a pretty
City.
good show, it seemed to be, from what I could tell.
Yeah, it was great fun, and John and I got to do that, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit. But my buddy John Henderson,
Great
from
friend. Great, and John Doomsday. It's funny how I went to Scarefest last year, and John was set up with this awesome table. I
right,
always go every year, or I try to. And John, I'd talked to him a little bit on Facebook, but I came across this table with I'm a really big Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan, and he had some really cool busts and stuff there. And he's got these artists that he's discussed, friends with, and they make all these cool things. And I was just like, I met him, we talked, and we've been friends about ever since. He's been on my show, I've been on his. We've had Swag on, talking wrestling, scary. I mean, we've just kind of it's almost, I mean, like a community. I mean, it's been
right.
how
Oh,
you and Michael Smith. I mean,
yeah, it definitely is a community. I mean, that's the thing with the horror community. It truly is a community. It truly is a family, and it's amazing how close we get. And I was never much for social media prior to this, as it is, my husband hates social media. He doesn't want to have any social media presence, and he's pissed that he's listed on my IMBD listing. I don't know how to get him off. I've
better
written
stay
to
in the
them.
shadows then, what?
Yeah, but but I never would have imagined that, I could make such close friends that I never met before through
Right.
Facebook. John and I met through Facebook. I mean, we had never even met in person by the time we agreed to do a show together. I mean, it was really interesting. Um, but yeah. Oh, just before I forget, because you said you're a big Texas Chainsaw fan. My agent will be pissed if I didn't mention it now that you said it. He's just put together. There's, I think it's tomorrow, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game is coming out.
Yes, that's a
He's a
big
real
deal.
gamer.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so to do that, to coincide with that, he's putting on a live streamy thing because he's a game kid,
Wow.
and with John Dugan, who's grandpa.
Yeah, at John.
Yeah, and I think he's going to have John and possibly someone else, and he wants me to. I don't know if I'll have time, but I might help him kind of host it because he'll be doing it online, whatever. But in any ways, he's going to do a fun thing. People, I think, people pay them a certain amount to if they want to join this whatever, and they're going to be giveaways and all kinds of fun things. So if anyone's really into that, check that out. Just look up Peter Valderrama
The promotion.
or John Dugan.
Yeah, John had posted on Facebook something about joining in on a stream and playing.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
it's funny you brought that up because the promotion for this game is nuts right now. I'm a professional wrestler in this area, and my character is the Human Horror Movie. I always pay tribute to a different horror character every time I come out.
Oh.
Well, about a week ago, I'd done a show where I was Leatherface as the pretty lady get up. And last night I was getting Facebook because he made an appearance on a national wrestling event due to the game last night, the promotion. So I was getting messages from people doing podcasts across the country thinking that was me on there because rumors were spreading. And I was just like, man, I wish I could tell you that was me, but it wouldn't. So,
Oh, isn't that interesting? And it's wild how horror and wrestling always seem to come together, and tattoos. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it meshes well together. I would
Yeah.
But Beatrice, what I was going to ask you is, what movie got you interested as a child into acting? What movie drove you to say, you know what, I want to do that?
Honestly, I would say more than movies, it probably was TV
Oh,
that got me interested in acting. I mean, I loved movies, but my parents were, they still are. They're Asian art historians, and they're, my family's all full of PhDs on both sides. Everyone's very intellectual and
Yeah.
whatever. And honestly, we didn't see much, we didn't go out for movies, we didn't watch TV all that much. They're all about, listening to classical music and going to museums. And, as a kid, it's like, not, but, I watched a lot of TV.
Yeah.
And 70s, TV is really my core of what I grew up on.
Yeah.
And as far as what watching what made me want to become an actor from watching was more the reality shows, which back in the day, the closest to reality was the show called Zoom, which I know we're all now thinking, your generation thinks of Zoom as this, what we're doing right here. But there was this show, it was a PBS show out of Chicago called Zoom. Come on and Zoom, 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 come on and Zoom. Anyway, box 350, Boston, Mass. 02134, send it to Zoom. Anyone who's my age will recognize that. But anyway, and it was this funny, it was a kid's, what do you call it? Like a show, like a
variety show or something.
A variety show for kids, and sort of teens. It was like teens. There was the Mickey Mouse Club was one, and then there was this one, and it's and I guess they did have a number of those kind of shows where it's like real live kids. Like, you can't really call it reality, but it's kind of like it, because it wasn't,
it wasn't like really scripted in storyline. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think on the Disney Channel when I was a kid, there was one called Kids Incorporated, and they played music and stuff.
So it might be like that. So, and so each episode had, they would have an activity, and then they have some games, and then they have different stories. But the part that really got me was they would show a little segment, and it was just a day in the life of, and they would show kids from around the world. And it would just be, like a 5-10 minute little section of showing a day, literally just a simple day. But it was very interesting because you'd get to see, kids in China going to school, or kids in Africa going to school, or kids in, in the Brazilian jungle, how they would have to take a little canoe, and, it just showed us different parts of life. And and I remember watching that. And by this point I had already been in plays and stuff. I was, just because school plays were fun to do. But when I saw that, something clicked in me, and it just, I don't know, it gave me this escape where when things would be bad in my real life, when things would be, say my mom got mad and beat me, or I hit, back in the days, she would have been arrested nowadays, but back in the day it was allowed. She'd take a stick and like hit me, and I'd be like welting and crying, and I'd run out into the woods, and I'd be so sad. And it gave me comfort, weird as that might be, to imagine that I was being watched. Like, it was this day in the life of it. And I was kind of like, I had an audience, and somehow I was the hero of that thing. And so people would kind of go, oh, poor her. I don't know what it was, but it just gave me this comfort, this idea of the camera watching. And then from that, it kind of transmuted to the escape that you could have by creating another character. So, I also found like that incredible joy that you could have by playing something other than yourself. And I think it happens for a lot of actors. Like, if you're shy in real life, but you step on stage, you can be like whatever. You can be the beautiful ingenue, or you can be the powerful hero. And, for that time that you're on stage or in front of the camera, you are that person, and that was it. It's kind of an escape. And then it just grew from there.
It sounds like you had a heck of an imagination as a kid, man. I mean, it's kind of like with me, when I was a kid, I'd get on the trampoline and I'd be these different characters, or, I would imagine myself performing in front of a group, fighting or boxing or wrestling, kind of that deal, man.
Right. And this is, I say this with my friends all the time. And, I mean, you're not so young as to not have had life before internet, and I'm very grateful for that. I really am. Like, I apologize to you younger viewers, but, we were the last generation that grew up without any of this stuff. And it was amazing for the imagination, because we had nothing else to do. So you had to use your imagination. It was all in the mind. And I think that's why there was so much creativity back then. There is still now. I mean, I think that's just human nature. We're pretty amazing. But I think, creativity was at the forefront they've done scientific tests and studies, and creativity definitely is spurred by boredom. Boredom really helps, and I remember, like most of us, if you went on a road trip, you just sat in the car, there was nothing to do. I mean, how many times can you, count the whatever you're counting, or I Spy with My Little Eye, stop sign, I don't know. It was pretty boring. So you'd sit there, and the radio station would crap out after, there was only so many stations you could listen to, so you had to just sit there and imagine, and I think we all came up with film scripts and houses we'd build, and just always thinking.
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, because I look back at my 10-year-old self, 8 to 12-year-old, and I spent a lot of time in the hills playing with, pick up sticks, and that was my machine guns, or
Right.
pine cones, that would be my grenades. So, I mean, even my kid who's 13 years old, he's sort of an outdoorsy kid, but nowhere near what we were, right before the internet and technology hit a big boom in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah. And my sister and I, we played, because we lived in so many different countries. When I was a little girl, I mean, I was born in Bennington, Vermont. We moved to Princeton, New Jersey, by the time I was, I think, 3. And then when I was 5, we moved to Japan. And then, so it was a completely new country. We were the only ones, the only foreigners in our town. We started off in Tokyo, then we moved to Kitakamakura. So that was another move, changing schools completely. Then from there, we moved back to New Jersey to a farm. Then we moved to Canada. We're always moving. And so
you have lived many lives. You have
yes,
been a lot. You've got so much life experience that it is nuts.
yeah,
Just the different cultures and that's probably why you're so spiritual and I mean, you've seen everything.
yeah, for sure. And I was introduced to so many things, to Buddhism and to Hinduism and to Christianity and to so many things. But it was great for the imagination, because again, the two of us were the only ones in common for a lot of our travels. And so we would play these imaginary games. And my parents also weren't into that generation. Kids didn't really have a lot of toys, and so, and you only got presents at Christmas, you folks. I don't know what everyone thinks. My kids are growing up, they get stuff all the time. It's ridiculous. But your birthday and Christmas was it.
That was it.
And you got like 1 or 2 things. But anyway, so we played these imagination games. Like when we were in Japan, we were both samurai. And then when we came back to the States, like we were Native Americans. The white guys were always the bad guys in our story. The cowboys were always stealing our land and stuff. But we become these characters, and when we would be outside, like in actually playing in the woods and stuff. But sometimes we'd get grounded, or it'd be late at night, and we'd have to come home. And we'd just continue. We could just lie in the beds, she's in her bed, I'm in my bed, in the dark, and we just would talk like, all right. And then I walked through, and this wolf appeared, and then she'd say, well, then I came over with my sword, or I don't know what, but I just remember like, I can remember some of those scenes as if I had lived through it. Like it becomes memory. It's really cool.
That is awesome. I mean, and it's a shame, because I can remember when we were all, before, like you said, as kids, when we spend the night together, we'd just hang out in the dark all night, and laying on the bed, and we'd all be telling wild stories, just like, I mean, basically just like that right there. And it's, we'd listen to our CDs. CDs are
right.
past, and but no, it's different. And to get moving on, I was going to ask you. It's been on my mind. Did they have you in mind for the role of Amanda Kruger, or did you have to audition? Like,
I had to audition. So what happened was, in that so it was 1980, yeah, 80, like the late 80s. 89 actually was sort of my big year, because I had just 2 movies that I starred in, Quarantine and Midnight Matinee, which are both Canadian films. I had the lead role in Quarantine, and I was one of the leads in Matinee. They had both come out that year. They opened up the Vancouver Film Festival, and I had the red carpet treatment, and I was kind of like a big shot in Vancouver at that point. I had worked my way up till I was the one that, everyone kind of recognized and whatnot. But I stupidly left, to follow my boyfriend and dumb things. Anyway, so I moved to LA. But in LA, I was brand new. They didn't know me there. I lucked out getting Martin Sheen's she managed Martin Sheen, Charlie Sheen, and Renee Estevez, and didn't really have any other clients. But so she wasn't technically an agent, but she took me on because I'd played Emilio's wife and Emilio Estevez's wife in Stakeout that you mentioned. And so he had given me her contact, and I invited her to the premiere of my movie Quarantine, which was premiering in LA. So she saw that and she signed me on. And the very first audition was Nightmare on Elm Street, first and last, um, because she, and I remember thinking to myself or saying to her, I don't know, horror film. I don't know if I really want to do that. And she says, no, no, no. This guy Stephen Hopkins is directing it. He's from Australia. He is this young up and coming director. I really want you to meet him for this project or anything. So go ahead. So I went in um, and at the time, I think it was him and Robert Shea and what was that other producer? And Annette Bening. No, not Annette Bening. The I'm terrible with names, but anyway, the other casting director, and and there was like 4 or 5 people in the room, and we spent a good 35, 40 minutes chatting, talking about how would we play Amanda, or how would I play Amanda? Is she alive? Is she dead? Should it be ghostly? Should it be real, just sort of normal? And I sang for them, and we just did I don't know, we just connected. And people have heard me say this before, but it was the one and only time in my whole career where right there in the casting room, they said, you're it. You got the part.
Wow, that's a home
Yeah.
run.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I joke about, was it just because like they're in a mad rush, which they were,
Yeah.
where they're just so desperate, like, okay, whatever, whoever comes in next, we'll just hire, unless she's horrible, we'll just hire her. It could have been that. I don't know. Or maybe I look so much like Freddy,
Yeah, I'm going to say that wasn't the case because that was that was a big budget Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I don't think they're going to gamble with that. I believe they probably seen you and said, "Hey, listen, I don't think it's going to get better than this. We've got the right one."
it was pretty, I mean, I was blown away. It was cool, that I got it right there. It was, unusual. However, just jumping ahead because of that,
Yeah.
every single audition after that was, like I said, horror films with unfortunately really, really bad scripts. And, in retrospect, had I stuck around and done them, I probably would be a lot more, certainly be richer, and I'd probably be maybe a lot more well known by then, but possibly not. I mean, as I said, they weren't good scripts. Like a couple of them have actually become films, nameable films, but I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
Because I don't want to insult anyone. But, it was mostly bad scripts. It was like, teenage, big boob women on motorcycles getting raped by Satan, or I don't know, like just, I just like each one I read was like just worse than the next. And I was like,
oh Lord.
Yeah, I don't know, but
no, was you a fan of the franchise before then, or had you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was a fan because I truly like horror wasn't the genre that I was into at all. But I had always loved scary movies, and I loved getting scared, and especially I had lived in Japan in such because I lived in Japan for 4 years from age 5 to age 9, which is such a what's the word, building years, like there's what's the word, when you're growing up, those are very influential years, I guess. They really shape a lot of who we become, right? When we're younger, we're absorbing everything. And oh my goodness, Japanese ghosts are terrifying. Really, really bone-chilling ghosts. The comic books we'd read were very scary, and the movies and stuff we'd watch. I mean, my sister was really into spooky stuff, so she would encourage us to look at those kind of things. And we were told some really, really terrifying ghost stories. And ghosts are a big part of life in Japan. I
That's
mean,
what I was getting ready to say. So Japanese ghosts are pretty spooky, you say?
Yeah, really spooky.
I'm going to research that tonight. I'm not going to forget that. I'm going to look up Japanese ghosts. Thank you, Beatrice, for that.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many comic books devoted to ghosts, and the characters, I don't know, they're just different. They're kind of slow and creepy, and usually there's something so sinister and evil with a lot of their ghosts because they, oftentimes will be very like a beautiful lady,
Yeah.
or an innocent looking child, and that it just turns creepy, and they also have kind of there's some gross senses of humor and stuff too but anyway, so yeah. So I was always I was raised to be very, you know, into scary stuff, and also my generation growing up in the when I came back to the States, which, in the 70s, holy, that was a huge decade of, classics. I mean, we had in the 70s was Rosemary's Baby was actually, I think, the 60s.
Yeah.
But,
That was the
The
boom.
Exorcist and Black Christmas and Trilogy of Terror and
Oh,
The
that's right.
Brood and, all these things. I mean, even Jaws, which, maybe is not horror per se, but it's horrifying, just gets your blood going. And even in TV, like things like, Sweet Little Sally Field was in Sybil, which was, I guess maybe that's more psychological horror, but
You had The
there
Shining also. I mean,
and The
that's
Shining, oh my goodness, so many things were going on back then. And so I totally watched those and loved the scare factor. I think what turned me off of horror as a genre was the gore.
yeah,
I'm squeamish and, I don't like to see a lot of blood and guts and gross, but, I love the psychological terror. I love getting scared.
yeah.
So, but for psychological terror or horror, it does take a little bit more writing. You have to, has to have a good script.
Yeah.
Whereas, not to put down any genres, but when it's just like a lot of gore and blood and guts and, I'm not one of those people that like love to, the higher the body count. Like, no,
Right.
no. To me, it's the storyline, the characters, and especially, you know, it's for me the scariest thing, which is very common, is innocence turn evil.
Yeah.
Because if somebody just comes out from the beginning, it's whatever. But if it's something, that you're kind of trusting and then they turn, and I think that's why we're so scared of dolls and clowns, although clowns are creepy to begin with,
Oh
but
God. You don't even know. My mom took me, I was probably 2 years old. And it's funny you brought up clowns because she took us to my brother played basketball and we was going on trips. They were having a Shriners convention
okay.
at like a big hotel we were at. Well, listen, when I tell you I was terrified of clowns, like I'm not even, it was bad. So we go walking around this hotel and we go around the corner and we bump into this guy and I look up and it's a clown and his wife. Well, I was traumatized and I think the clown was more scared than me, my mom said. I mean, his wife was laughing. But yeah, clowns. It was,
Clowns, yeah. Well, I have told this same story too in on interviews. So if repeat listeners, I apologize. But yeah, my first incidents, I think it was around two as well, 2 or 3. I mean, I was walking. Well, I guess you're walking by 2. Um, I was 2, 3, somewhere in there. My mom took me to an old timey circus, which was in a tent or whatever. And I'll never forget. I had to go to the bathroom, so she took me around the side and there I saw sitting, in on a hay bale was this clown. And he had the face, the mouth is like this big painted smile, and certainly in the ring he was all smiling. But here I saw this fake smile going up this way, but his face was like this, fucking old god, god damn it. And he was cursing and smoking and spitting, and it you know it was such a contrast, and I was so shocked and horrified, just in the same way that kids get, not scared, but they're like so surprised if they see a teacher in a grocery store, it's
yeah,
out of context.
just shocked.
Here you're shocked, and here I'd seen this guy supposed to be happy, waving, and suddenly he's all, and especially the painted on face. I mean, it was very symbolic. It's like
Yeah.
fake, yeah, clowns, forget it.
Clowns were, and I'll never forget the Pee Wee's play, or not Pee Wee's play,
Yeah.
Pee Wee's, whichever one they stole the bike. And
Right.
me and my mom were home alone, and my dad went hunting with my brothers or something. And I was just probably 4, and I remember just watching Pee Wee Herman in the living room, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Then all of a sudden, he has a bad dream of these evil clowns, and I lost. I'll never forget it. I mean, that was one of the top 5 scariest moments of my life. Pee
Oh
Wee.
my goodness. Yeah.
But Beatrice, you've had a heck of a run here the last little bit. We've been talking a little bit. I wanted to bring up Doomsday Crypt before we leave, because you're going to be coming to Scarefest October.
Yep.
John and the gang are going to be there. I'm going to be there with you guys, hanging out for a little bit. Cannot wait. You're going to love
Awesome.
it. You
Yeah.
are going to love that Kentucky, that Southern hospitality. You're going to enjoy that.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I
So
can't wait.
You're going to meet a lot of great people. Big swag, Brett Wagner, heck of a guy. I'm so glad you both are going to be there. That's going to be cool. Like I said, you're going to enjoy that a lot. You got anything else before you get there? You're going to be appearing at?
Yes. So let's see. So that's okay. Yeah, September 15th to 17th, I'm going to be at Terracon, which is in Marlborough. Marlborough. Where the heck is that? In Massachusetts. I think it's just outside of Boston, and that's probably, as far as I can see, one of the biggest Elm Street reunions, in a long time. Because the big king, Robert will be there, Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp, and Amanda Weiss, or Wiss, from one. Who else
Yeah.
is from? A couple other people, I think, from one. Mark and Kim will be there from two. I think they might have, I'm not sure who they have from three, but Lisa will be there. I don't know if Danny's coming to that one, but Lisa Wilcox from 4 and 5 will be there. I will be there from 5. I think Whit from 5 will be there. Erica will be there from 5. Maybe Joe's, I don't know, but check it out. So Terracon, there's going to be a ton of Elm Street folk there. And then Main Street Comic Con in Pennsylvania is right after that. And then another one in Pennsylvania, Central PA Tattoo and Horror Expo, I'll be at. And then another one in West Virginia, KillCon.
KillCon.
Yeah, Beckley, West Virginia. And then,
I think.
yeah, I'm not too familiar with it. And then, yay, then we get to Scarefest, which I'm so looking forward to. Yeah, and John pulled the whole, he pulled it all together. He's got me and Brett, because he,
Yes.
so he's got DK and the Schwag, and then DK and the B. We both.
I'm always on there watching you guys, man. I mean, like I said, we've had each other on my show. I've been on the Crypt, and he's been on Wild Time, and we just have a good time together, man. We're good friends. He's just a good. Solid guy. I mean,
totally a wonderful guy. Did you catch our Elm Street reunion last
the other
week?
night? I work kids out, like when I get home from my job. I've got a home gym, so what I do is I try to put my phone up and catch it going on as I'm back and forth. But I did catch a little bit. I seen Michael Bailey Smith on there.
Yeah.
I've seen a few other ones, and I was going to announce that actually before I forget. We've got Beatrice Boepple on tonight, Amanda Kruger. This is the start of October for Wild Time Podcast, where we're going to get our spooky guest on. But the next guest that I have worked on and pulled is one of your comrades, Michael Bailey Smith.
He's such a sweetheart too. Yeah,
a massive man. And the thing that really stuck out to me was the Hills Have Eyes remake he was in. My goodness, he was armed. He was, Super Freddy. He was in Hills Have Eyes too as a different character.
Right.
So I'm going to hit him up for some fitness tips and stuff too, because he's a large, imposing individual. But that's going to be my next guest. It's going to be in September. Me and my wife, we usually do like a kind of like a marriage episode once or twice a month, talk about just different things. But
fun, cool.
So
speaking of wrestling, do you know, or were you familiar with I called him Big Paul because I have a son named Paul. Paul E. Normus.
Paul E. Normus. Paul E. Dangerously, or Paul E. Heyman. Paul E. Normus. Where would he be?
Well, he was out of New York, but he's dead, unfortunately. It was funny because, oh God, this had to have been about 20 years ago. He was my trainer.
Yeah.
But he was a wrestler, and his wrestling name was Paul, and then the Enormous. Yeah. He was a huge guy.
I will look him. And I was going to ask, do you work out pretty regular? Because you're in really good shape. Do you do yoga pretty regular?
Yeah, no, I'm a yoga teacher. So that
makes perfect sense, because you're in excellent condition.
For a 61-year-old, I am.
You take care of yourself. You don't, you treat your body right. 60 is the same as a 35-year-old now, honestly. You look how modern medicine's changed, how people's more, like you said earlier, you're
although it does, thank you, and yoga 100% is hugely responsible. However, I will say from mid 50s onward, if you were rough as a kid, which I was and most of us were, I mean, I was thrown off horses. I can't tell you how many times I was hit by cars. I've been in so many weird accidents and my body, but you just get up, you heal. I've had ribs broken. I've had so many things happen to me. And, I always bounce back and I was like, whoo, hoo, hoo, but it catches up with you.
Oh, it doesn't.
So, yeah.
I did MMA, I did boxing, I did pro wrestling, and my body, I'm 38, my body's feeling it's a lot different than 28.
Right? Yeah, it starts to catch up with you. And now it's a good thing, we're sitting down for this interview, but um a few weeks back I was doing a line dancing class. A bunch of girls and I had been doing these line dancing, and there was some funky little move that I don't know what I did. I pulled my groin, and oh my gosh. And stupidly, I mean, as a yoga teacher and a yoga studio owner, I'm helping people all the time with back pains and this, that, and the other. But generally, like, there's all these good stretches and things to work it out, and I kept stretching and teaching my class, and I went for long walks and everything, and took another dance class, and found out that you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to rest it and ice it, and it is so bad now I can barely walk.
Well, you're in luck because the sponsor of this show is Bo's Tractor Works, Appalachian Hills 11. Hold on here.
Ooh,
And it's a
okay.
CBD. Well, let me show you. It's a CBD cream, and everybody, what is wrong with me? There we
Oh,
go.
there you go. Appalachian Hills. Okay.
And
Ooh,
it is
Bo's
like I've seen elderly women with arthritis in their hands. They put this on, and they're almost in tears because their fingers straighten up. I put it on my muscles like before I lift, and I mean, and we're going to send you one of this for your muscle strength, and
Oh,
you
that would be great.
and I'll bring you. I'll actually get your address off this, and then we'll send you one, and I'm going to bring John one also and Swag to Scarefest because these guys are making a really big difference around here. This stuff is people's coming and buying it. They're putting it on their muscles, their joints. If you've got gout in your foot, it's been helping. So,
Oh, wow.
Bo's Tractor Works, Appalachian Hills 11. It's got 11 natural ingredients in it. It is.
Okay.
You're going to enjoy this stuff. I think you'll like it.
Oh, sounds great. Yeah, because this is some painful, I'm telling you, and it sucks. I actually had to get a substitute teacher for my class this Saturday because I could teach it, but I'm not going to walk down into the studio limping like that. It just won't look so good.
We
Ugh.
will get you hooked up with that, and we'll make sure. I have a question from my friend who is a radio host around here, and he actually interviewed Robert England a few years back on local radio, which was a huge, huge deal. His name's Jerry Scott, and he wanted to know if you had any funny memories of Robert England on set.
Well, funny. To be honest with you, I don't personally have funny ones because it was so interesting. Both, actually, a number of the actors on Five, anyway, never saw him outside of makeup. And because it was such a rushed production and we were going from set to set, in one building, we had different sets going on at different times. And my character had no makeup, so I was never in the makeup trailer, which is where you can really get a chance to talk to him. Like, he'll tell us stories and go on and on and on. And it's not even like we had, a lot of films will break for meal, and everyone, crew and cast and everything can go outside and get the meal. Ours was just, I think you just caught it as you could. I don't know. I just remember everything being so rushed. So when I first was introduced and met him, he was already in costume, and most of our scenes were just like on set, like we were working. And I didn't get a lot of chance to hang out with him, which was kind of crazy, but playing his mom. But yeah, unfortunately, nothing funny other than, I mean, it was funny in the odd way to
Yeah.
be working with, and this was, for me, it was just such an odd experience to be, like, again, I wasn't a major Elm Street fan. However, but I wasn't a non-fan. I mean, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 1, and I was in theater school at the time. I was in college taking theater. I was in the room in the theater with all these other actors, and we're watching it, getting the scares that, we were meant to get with Elm Street 1. And it's just weird how life works out, because it was less than 4 years after that, or 5 years or whatever. I'd worked with Johnny Depp. I worked with Robert. I played Robert Englund's mom. Like, so here I had been watching it as an actor, this guy, and then 4 or 5 years later, I'm playing his mom. It was just such a surreal,
Yeah. Nailed it.
very, very surreal.
Yeah.
But one other thing in terms of that whole experience, as I'm pretty sure everybody across the board, whoever you interview from Elm Street, would say none of us, I don't think even Robert had a clue how big it was and how big it would be. I mean, Robert had a clue more than the rest of us, but that it would be 34 years later, that 35 years, 40 years later, it'd be such a big cult classic.
Yeah. I mean, it's
None of us
iconic.
knew.
It's
Yeah,
iconic. I mean,
yeah,
it's and every sequel, man, has been, they've got you, and I'm like that with Chainsaw too. Every sequel I can find something good out of, and
right,
that's the way a lot of people are with Nightmare on Elm Street too, man. I mean, you can find something, they say, hey, I ain't wild about this one, but I do like this about it,
right.
that's something cool. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah. And I think, and mine in particular, that has really been the underdog. I mean, 2 and 5 were, it depends on who you talk to, but there's other ones that were hated, I suppose. But, for the longest time, 2 was hated. Everyone hated,
Yeah.
oh, Mark Patton, and oh, it's too gay, and it's all
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. And now it's like one of the biggest ones. People love it. And
It
there's
was
been a
ahead of
whole
its
new,
time. I mean, it was.
yeah, it was a different time. 5 for other reasons, as a lot of people didn't like it. And, there's all these different reasons, but I think it's taking a resurgence. People are starting to see it in different eyes. And then my character in particular, Amanda, who was very under underrepresented. I don't know. To me, it's a not just because I played her, but what she represented was such a big thing, which is why I wrote the book. You know about my book, right?
No, give us the lowdown on that, right?
Oh, okay. Hold on. It's yeah. So
The Kruger Curse, a nightmare. Are you going to have these at Scarefest?
yes, I will. You
Everybody,
can buy them. Yeah.
everybody. Beatrice Boepple will have the Kruger Curse at
And
Scarefest in Lexington selling them.
yes. Yeah, I will sign them there. There's amazing illustrations in it, and it's and just go look it up,
Man, that is
Kruger's Curse,
awesome.
and you're gonna honestly, every review has been phenomenal. And
Wow.
I just some of the biggest fans that the Fred heads, that's who I wrote it for, right? Elm Street fans is what I wrote this for, and they're kind of like the scariest audience to write an Elm Street
Man,
prequel, because they grew up with this, they love it, they know every single character, they know everything about it. So if you write shit, they're gonna be really pissed,
oh yeah.
and but now I'm fully confident. I've heard enough from wide enough people. Everyone loves it.
You feel good about it.
I do feel good about it, and it gives you the backstory of Freddy Krueger, what made him the way he is, but it through the eyes of his mother.
Wow.
So you find out the back history of the mother, and it fills in all kinds of blanks that watching the movies you don't know. Like his stepfather, Alice Cooper played.
Right.
What
And
the
what
heck
he
was?
said.
Yeah, what was up with him? Like, why was he beating on this kid? Was there a mom around? Like, what was that? They wouldn't just.
So that's incorporated in your book?
Yeah, this
Holy
whole thing, this is it, where did he get the sweater? Why did the jump rope girls appear? Like it's like it follows the movies. Like basically what you learn in 6, I think, is where they tell you the most, because you remember there's all those
He's in the classroom with the animal.
the class getting teased, we see he kills that mouse or
Yeah.
whatever. The kids are teasing him. We see that he gets married. We see that he kills his wife. He has a daughter. All that kind of stuff is shown in that. But briefly, this takes you into more detail, and it's the backstory. And where this book ends is where Nightmare on Elm Street begins. More I will
Keep going
do.
at Scarefest for me, because I'll be down there and I definitely want to get that. That is awesome.
Okay. All right. I will definitely save one for you.
Listen, Beatrice, thank you so much for coming on. And I know it's a little bit weird right now. I didn't turn my lights on down here, so it's getting darker and
Right.
and
Yeah.
everything.
Ooh, yeah.
So you can see I don't know why I've been on this big spooky season kick, but like I said, I know you're a busy lady, and I just want to thank you for the minutes you gave us, man. Thank you, because a lot of people check this out, a lot of horror fans. And listen, don't be a stranger. I'm a part of the Doomsday Crypt crew too, so you remember
All
that.
right. Yeah. Oh, awesome. I love the Doomsday Crypt family. So I look forward to seeing you down there. And thank you for having me on the show. And thank you all you guys watching and listening. And
we will listen, we will get you the Bose Tractor Works, the CBD cream down. It will make a world of difference. And like I said, you have a good time and stay safe. And we'll see you in Lexington, Beatrice.
all right. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.